The church in Seattle, Washington, was breathtaking. White roses cascaded down the altar, their petals scattered along the aisle like fallen snow. Golden sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, painting everything in warm hues. The string quartet played softly as 200 guests watched me walk toward what I thought was my future. My heart hammered against my ribs, but it was the good kind of racing. Pure joy. Ethan stood at the altar in his perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his dark eyes locked on mine. At 32, he looked nervous, which made me smile. Even after 3 years together, I, Clara Elise Thornton, age 30, still made him nervous. The pastor, Thomas Edward Brooks, 55, opened his worn Bible. "We are gathered here today to witness the union of Ethan Michael Reed and Clara Elise Thornton in holy matrimony." I squeezed Ethan's hands. His palms were sweaty. "Do you, Ethan, take Clara to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer, for better or worse, till death do you part?" "I do." His voice cracked slightly. The pastor turned to me. "Do you, Clara, take Ethan to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold in sickness?" And wait. The voice cut through the sacred silence like a blade. Every head turned. Gasps rippled through the congregation like a wave hitting shore. My maid of honor, Emily Lauren Hughes, 29, stood from her place at the altar. The woman I'd known since kindergarten. The woman I'd trusted with every secret, every fear, every dream. She wore the dusty rose bridesmaid dress we picked out together, but her face was twisted with something ugly I'd never seen before. "I can't let this happen," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the church. "Clara, you need to know the truth." Welcome to Renvenge Zinnia. If you're watching this, please drop a like and subscribe, and let me know where you're from in the comments. You will not believe what happened next. My father, Robert Joseph Carter, 60, half rose from his seat in the front pew. My mother, Elena Marie Carter, 58, grabbed his arm, her knuckles white. The whispers started immediately, a low buzz that grew louder by the second. "Emily, what are you doing?" I kept my voice steady, but my heart had stopped racing with joy. Now it was racing with something else entirely. She lifted her chin, defiant. "I'm pregnant, Clara, and Ethan is the father." The gasps turned into shocked exclamations. Someone behind me whispered, "Oh my God," loud enough for everyone to hear. The string quartet's music faltered and died. Ethan went pale as paper. "Emily, don't." "Don't what?" She stepped closer, her voice getting stronger, more vicious. "Don't tell her how you've been coming to my apartment for months. Don't tell her how you said you were having second thoughts about the wedding. Don't tell her how you whispered that you loved me while we—" My brother, Lucas Daniel Carter, 34, shot to his feet, his face murderous. My sister, Olivia Grace Carter, 26, grabbed his arm before he could charge the altar. Emily smirked at me, triumph gleaming in her dark eyes. "Face it, Clara, you're the consolation prize. He settled for you because I wouldn't commit. But now that we're having a baby," she placed her hand on her still flat stomach. "Well, priorities change." The church had gone dead quiet except for my grandmother, Isabella Rosa Martinez, 82, her rosary beads clicking together as she prayed rapidly in Spanish. I looked at Ethan. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. He couldn't even look me in the eye. That's when I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a shark might give right before it struck. "Oh, Emily," I said, my voice carrying clearly in the silence. "You poor, delusional little girl." Her smirk faltered. I reached into my bouquet and pulled out my phone. With one swipe, I activated the Bluetooth speaker system we'd installed for the reception music. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue this fascinating display, I think you should all hear something." Emily's face went from triumphant to confused to absolutely terrified as her own voice filled the church through the speakers. God, Ethan is such an idiot. He has no idea I've been sleeping with his brother and his best man. The pregnancy could be any of theirs, but Ethan makes the most money. So, the recording continued. Emily's laugh echoed off the church walls as she bragged to someone on the phone about her plan, about how she'd been manipulating all 3 men, about how she planned to take Clara's pathetic little prince for everything he's worth. Emily dropped to her knees right there at the altar, her face white as the communion wafer. "Clara, I can explain." "Oh, you'll have plenty of time to explain," I said calmly, "to the police, to the DNA lab, and to my lawyer." I looked out at the stunned congregation. 3 hours later, my so-called husband and maid of honor were begging me not to press charges, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue, please write in the comment which country you are watching this video. We love knowing where our global family is tuning in from. And if this is your first time on this channel, please subscribe. Your support helps us bring even more epic revenge tales of life. Enjoy listening. My name is Clara Elise Thornton, and up until that moment, I thought I was living my dream life. I'm a pediatric nurse at Seattle Children's Hospital, the kind of woman who believes in happily ever after because I spend my days helping kids believe in miracles. At 30, I had everything mapped out. Marry Ethan, buy a house with a white picket fence, have 2 kids, and a golden retriever named Bella. Ethan Michael Reed, 32, was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, handsome, successful. He worked as a financial advisor at his family's investment firm. Old money, good breeding, the kind of man who looked perfect in family Christmas photos. We met at my cousin's wedding 3 years ago. He was the best man. I was a bridesmaid. Classic story. He spilled red wine on my dress during the reception, then insisted on paying for the dry cleaning. One coffee date turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekend trips. Weekend trips turned into moving in together. "He's perfect for you, Mia," my mother always said. She loved how he brought flowers every Sunday dinner, how he remembered to ask about her book club, how he promised to give her grandchildren soon. My family adored him. Dad called him Mijo and took him fishing. My brother Lucas, who never liked any of my boyfriends, actually invited Ethan to his poker games. Olivia, my younger sister and toughest critic, grudgingly admitted he had potential. But Emily Lauren Hughes, 29, loved him most of all. Emily and I had been inseparable since we were 5 years old. We lived 3 houses apart on a Seattle street. Same schools, same classes, same dreams of moving to New York to become fashion designers. When high school ended and I chose nursing while she chose marketing, we promised distance would never change us. She was my automatic first call for everything. Bad day at work. Call Emily. Good news to share. Call Emily. When Ethan proposed at the beach last Christmas, she was the second person I told right after I called my parents. "I'm so happy for you," she'd squealed over FaceTime, her face pixelated but her smile bright. "You deserve this, Clara. You deserve everything." She threw me the most elaborate engagement party. She organized my bachelorette weekend in Vegas. She spent hours with me picking out bridesmaid dresses, arguing with the florist, tasting cake samples until we were sick. "I can't wait to stand beside you on your big day," she said during one of our planning sessions. "We've been sisters since kindergarten. Now it'll be official when I'm your maid of honor." I laughed. Maid of honor. You're not married yet. Yet being the operative word, she'd winked. Maybe your wedding will inspire Dylan to finally propose. Dylan Christopher Lee, 30, was her boyfriend of 2 years. Sweet, quiet accountant who worshipped the ground she walked on. I always thought they'd get married before Ethan and me. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs, like how Emily always found reasons to drop by our apartment when Ethan was home, how she'd linger after I left for early shifts, claiming she wanted to catch up with Ethan about work stuff since they both worked in finance, how Ethan started working late more often, especially on nights when Emily said she was too tired to join our group dinners, how my phone would buzz with texts from her at odd hours. "Just thinking about you at 2:03 a.m. Hope you're having a good day," right in the middle of my shift when she knew I couldn't respond. How Ethan became distant the last few months before the wedding. Shorter conversations, less eye contact. When I asked if he was getting cold feet, he'd pull me close and say, "Never. I can't wait to marry you, Clara." But there were other signs too. Ones that my trusting heart chose to interpret as pre-wedding jitters. The way he'd get nervous when his phone buzzed during dinner. How he started putting it face down on tables. How he'd step into the other room to take calls claiming it was work stuff even on weekends. The mysterious charges on our joint credit card. Small amounts, $500 to $1,000. Nothing suspicious individually. Coffee shops I'd never been to. A jewelry store purchase of $2,500 he claimed was a surprise for later. Gas stations on the other side of Seattle when he said he'd been working late downtown. 3 weeks before the wedding, I found a pregnancy test in our bathroom trash. Not used, just the empty box. When I asked Ethan about it, he looked genuinely confused. "Maybe Olivia left it when she visited last weekend," he suggested. I called my sister. She laughed. "Girl, I'm still not even dating anyone. Seriously, must have been housekeeping. You know how those hotel maids sometimes dump their personal trash in guest bins?" It made no sense, but I believed it because I wanted to. The night before the wedding, during the rehearsal dinner, Emily seemed different. She kept checking her phone and barely touched her food. When my aunt asked if she was feeling all right, she snapped, "I'm fine, just tired from all the wedding planning." Ethan was weird too. He kept staring at Emily when he thought no one was looking. When she got up to use the bathroom, he found an excuse to step outside for fresh air. 2 minutes later. "You okay, bro?" Lucas asked Ethan during the toasts. "You look like you're about to throw up." "Wedding nerves," Ethan laughed, but it sounded forced. "You know how it is." But Lucas didn't know how it was. He'd never been married. None of us had, except my parents and aunts and uncles who'd been together so long, they made love look easy. That night, Ethan and I followed tradition and stayed apart. He went to his best man's hotel room while I stayed at my parents' house with my bridesmaids. Emily was the last to leave after helping me hang my dress. "Clara," she said at the door, her voice strange, "you know I love you, right?" "Of course I do. I love you too." She hugged me tighter than usual. "Tomorrow is going to change everything." "I hope so," I laughed. "That's kind of the point of weddings." But she wasn't smiling when she pulled away. I woke up at 6 a.m. on my wedding day with butterflies doing aerial acrobatics in my stomach. Good butterflies, though. The kind that come with Christmas morning excitement and first day of vacation anticipation. The house was already buzzing with activity. Mom was in the kitchen making her famous breakfast burritos for me and my bridesmaids. Olivia was setting up the coffee station with military precision. The phone rang constantly with last-minute vendor confirmations and relatives asking for directions to the Seattle church. "Morning, beautiful bride." Emily breezed through the front door at 7 sharp carrying a tray of fancy coffee drinks. "Triple shot vanilla latte for the blushing bride because we need you caffeinated and gorgeous." She looked perfect as always, hair already done in loose Hollywood waves, makeup flawless, wearing yoga pants that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Even at 7 a.m., Emily looked like she was ready for a magazine photo shoot. "You're an angel," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. I was so nervous I forgot to eat breakfast. "That's what maids of honor are for." She kissed my cheek. "To make sure you don't faint at the altar from low blood sugar." The morning flew by in a blur of hair appointments, makeup touch-ups, and constant photo taking. My cousin Ava Sophia Nguyen, 27, documented everything with her professional camera. Getting into my dress, a princess-style ball gown with hand-sewn pearls that took my mother and me 8 months to save $20,000 for, half the $40,000 total wedding cost. My grandmother Isabella fastening the family pearl necklace around my neck with shaking hands. My father Robert crying when he saw me in full wedding regalia. "Mia, you look like a queen," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Emily helped with everything. She fluffed my train, fixed my veil when it got caught on doorways, touched up my lipstick between photos. The perfect maid of honor, my best friend since forever. But looking back, she was also checking her phone constantly. Quick glances when she thought no one was looking. Her fingers flying over the screen when she stepped into the bathroom or went to grab something from her car. At one point, Olivia caught her. "Girl, who are you texting so much? Dylan's at the golf course with the guys. It's bad luck for the bridal party to talk to the groomsmen before the ceremony." Emily's cheeks flushed pink. "Just work stuff. You know how it is with clients." "On a Saturday?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. My sister had built-in detectors that could spot lies from space. "Financial markets never sleep," Emily said smoothly. Too smoothly. We arrived at the Seattle church at 2 p.m. for photos before the 4 p.m. ceremony. The photographer positioned us all over the grounds. Me with my parents, me with my bridesmaids, me alone by the altar looking contemplative. Every shot was perfect. Ethan and his groomsmen were getting ready in the church basement. Protocol said we weren't supposed to see each other before the ceremony, but honestly, I was dying to catch a glimpse. 3 years together, and I still got excited just seeing his face. "Can you check if they need anything downstairs?" I asked Emily during a break between photo sets. "Make sure Ethan remembered his allergy medication. You know how his eyes get watery around all these flowers?" She nodded quickly. Of course, back in 5 minutes. She was gone for 20. When she came back, her lipstick was slightly smudged and her hair looked less perfectly arranged, like someone had run their fingers through it. "Everything okay down there?" I asked. "Perfect," she said. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. "Ethan says he can't wait to see you." The ceremony was supposed to start at 4 p.m. By 3:45, guests were filing into the church, filling up the wooden pews. I peeked through the bridal suite window and saw aunts and uncles, college friends, co-workers, neighbors. Everyone who mattered in my life gathered to witness my happy ending in Seattle. Ethan's family took up the right side of the church, old money elegance in navy blue and pearls. My family claimed the left side with bright colors and loud laughter and enough perfume to choke a horse. At 3:55, the wedding coordinator knocked on our door. "Ladies, it's showtime." My bridesmaids lined up. My college roommate, Chloe Isabel Parker, 30, my cousin Ava, Ethan's sister Mia Charlotte Reed, 34, and Emily at the front as maid of honor. They all looked beautiful in their dusty rose dresses, carrying bouquets of white roses and baby's breath. Dad offered me his arm. "Ready, Misha?" I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of roses and old wood and the faint smell of my grandmother's prayer candles. "Ready?" The doors opened. The string quartet began the wedding march. Every face turned toward me, smiling and dabbing at tears. This was it, the moment I dreamed about since I was a little girl playing dress-up in my mother's wedding gown. I walked down that aisle feeling like I was floating. The Seattle church was perfect. The music was perfect. Ethan looked perfect, standing at the altar in his black tuxedo with the white rose boutonniere. Everything was perfect until it wasn't. "I'm pregnant, Clara, and Ethan is the father." The words hung in the air like poison gas. I felt the entire congregation inhale collectively, then hold their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. My bouquet suddenly felt heavy in my hands. The church, which had been warm and golden just seconds before, now felt cold and stark. Every eye was on me, watching for my reaction, waiting for me to crumble. But I didn't crumble. Instead, something ice-cold settled in my chest, clarity sharp as a blade. Ethan finally found his voice. "Emily, please don't do this. Not here, not now." "When else, Ethan?" She stepped closer to him, her voice growing stronger, more confident. "When you're on your honeymoon, when Clara's already legally tied to you, when it's too late for her to make an informed choice." She turned to face our guests, playing to the audience like an actress on stage. "I'm sorry, everyone. I know this is awkward, but Clara deserves to know the truth before she makes the biggest mistake of her life." My father Robert's face had gone from confused to murderous. He started to rise from his seat, but my mother, Elena, grabbed his wrist. "Esteban, no," she hissed. "Let Clara handle this." Emily looked back at me, and for a split second I saw something that looked almost like regret flash across her face. But then her chin lifted, and the mask of righteous indignation slid back into place. "I didn't plan for this to happen," she continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the church. "Ethan and we fought it for months. We both love you, Clara. But sometimes love isn't enough to stop. Other kinds of love." The guests were starting to murmur now, whispers rippling through the pews like wind through wheat. I caught fragments. "Oh my God, did she just... that poor girl at her own wedding. The audacity." Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Sweat had broken out on his forehead, and his hands were shaking. "Clara, I can explain." "Explain what?" Emily interrupted. "Explain how you told me you were having second thoughts about the wedding. Explain how you said you felt trapped. Explain how you whispered my name when we... Enough!" My brother Lucas shot to his feet like a rocket, his face twisted with rage. He started toward the altar, but Olivia and my cousin Julian Mateo Carter, 32, grabbed his arms, holding him back. "Let me go," Lucas snarled. "I'm going to deal with him. I'm going to kill both of them." The security guard Dad had hired for the reception moved forward, ready to intervene if my family decided to start a brawl in the house of God. Emily seemed to feed off the chaos. Her eyes were bright, almost fevered. "Clara, you have to understand, I never meant for this to happen. But we can't help who we fall in love with. And Ethan, he loves me. He's always loved me." She placed both hands on her stomach in a gesture that was clearly meant to be protective and maternal. "This baby deserves to have its father, and Ethan deserves to be with the woman he truly wants." Ethan looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "Emily, stop talking. You're making this worse." But she was on a roll now, drunk on the attention and drama. "Worse, Ethan? Hiding the truth is what made this worse. Living a lie is what made this worse." She gestured toward me. "Look at her standing there in that ridiculous dress, thinking she's about to marry the love of her life. Don't you think she deserves better than a man who wishes he was marrying someone else?" That's when something snapped inside my chest. Not broke, snapped, like a rubber band that had been stretched too tight. I smiled. It must have been quite a smile because Emily actually took a step backward. "Oh, honey," I said, my voice soft and sweet as honey. "You sweet, stupid little girl." Her confident expression wavered. I reached into my bouquet and pulled out my phone. With one smooth motion, I activated the Bluetooth connection to the church's sound system, the same system we'd installed to play our wedding music. "Before we continue with this fascinating performance," I announced, my voice now carrying clearly through the speakers, "I think everyone should hear something." Emily's face went white. "Clara, what are you—" I pressed play. Emily's own voice filled the church, crystal clear through the professional sound system. God, Ethan is such an idiot. He has no idea I've been sleeping with his brother and his best man. The pregnancy could be any of theirs, but Ethan makes the most money, so obviously he's my best bet for child support. The congregation gasped in unison, but the recording wasn't finished. Clara's so pathetically naive. It's almost sad. She actually thinks Ethan loves her. Meanwhile, he can't keep his hands off me every time she works late shifts. Last week, he said he wishes he'd proposed to me instead. Ethan's face had gone from pale to green. He looked like he might actually vomit right there at the altar. But Emily's voice continued, bright with laughter. The best part is she's paying $20,000 for half the $40,000 wedding. So technically, she's funding her own humiliation. God, I can't wait to see her face when I tell everyone. It's going to be so delicious. The church was dead silent except for the sound of my grandmother's rosary beads clicking faster and faster as she prayed. The recording kept playing. Emily bragging about manipulating all three men. Emily laughing about how she planned to take Clara's pathetic little prince for everything he's worth. Emily discussing her backup plan. If Ethan doesn't leave me, I'll just claim he raped me. Who's going to believe his word over mine? By the time I finally stopped the recording, Emily had collapsed onto her knees at the altar, her face buried in her hands. The dusty rose dress pooled around her like spilled wine. "Clara," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please, I can explain. I was drunk when I said those things. I didn't mean—" "You didn't mean to get caught," I corrected, my voice still amplified by the speakers. "There's a difference." I turned to Ethan, who looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Anything you'd like to add, honey? Or should I play the recording of you calling me boring, clingy, while you were screwing my best friend in the apartment I pay half the rent for?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. Opened it again. No words came out. I looked out at the congregation. 200 faces stared back at me, expressions ranging from shocked to appalled to impressed to murderous. Those were mostly my relatives. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said calmly, "I apologize for the interruption, but as you can see, we have a slight issue with the groom and my maid of honor. Something about honesty, fidelity, and basic human decency." My father, Robert, finally broke free from my mother's grip and stood up. "Clara, mija, do you want me to—" "No, Papa, I've got this." And I did. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely in control. "You want to know the funny thing?" I said, my voice still carrying through the church speakers as I looked down at Emily, who was still on her knees at the altar. "I've known about you two for months." The congregation rustled like leaves in wind. Emily's head snapped up, her face streaked with mascara tears. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Is it?" I pulled out my phone again, scrolling through photos. "Shall we start with the pictures my neighbor, Lillian Margaret Hayes, 70, took of you leaving our apartment building at 6 a.m. on February 14th? You know, Valentine's Day, when I was working a double shift at the hospital." I held up the phone so everyone could see the clear photo of Emily doing the walk of shame in yesterday's clothes. "Or maybe we should discuss the credit card charges, Ethan." I turned to my groom, who looked like he wanted to evaporate. "The ones you thought I wouldn't notice because they were small amounts, $500 to $1,000. The coffee shop where you meet Emily every Tuesday. The jewelry store where you bought her that $2,500 diamond necklace she's wearing right now." Emily's hand flew to her throat where a delicate chain with a tiny diamond pendant caught the church light. The same pendant I'd seen in our credit card statement and assumed was a surprise for me. "The hotel room you booked last month, when you told me you were at that financial conference in Chicago," I continued. "Except the conference was virtual, wasn't it, Ethan? And you were actually 20 minutes away at the Marriott downtown with my maid of honor." Ethan finally found his voice. "Clara, I can explain." "Explain what?" "How you took $75,000 from our joint wedding account to pay for her credit card bills. How you used my $10,000 engagement ring money from my grandmother to cover her rent when she got fired from her marketing job. How you promised her you'd call off our wedding after the honeymoon so she could save face." The church erupted in gasps and angry murmurs. Someone behind me said, "Jesus Christ," loudly enough to make Pastor Thomas wince, but I wasn't done. "Or maybe," I said, my voice getting dangerously soft, "we should discuss the real reason Emily is here making this dramatic announcement." Emily struggled to her feet, her hands shaking. "Clara, please." "See, here's the thing about my best friend since kindergarten," I told the congregation like I was giving a toast at a dinner party. "She's always been competitive, always wanted what I had, my dolls, my clothes, my boyfriends. But this time, she bit off more than she could chew." I walked closer to Emily, my wedding dress rustling with each step. The guests were so quiet I could hear the silk train sliding across the marble floor. "Tell them about the DNA test, Emily." Her face went ashen. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The DNA test you took last week," I pressed. "The one that proved the baby isn't Ethan's." The church exploded. Gasps, exclamations, the sound of shocked whispers turning into full conversations. Someone's grandmother started praying loudly in Spanish. Ethan stared at Emily like he'd never seen her before. What is she talking about? Emily's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. That's not... Clara, you're lying. Am I? I pulled out a folded paper from inside my bouquet. Paternity test results dated last Tuesday. 24% probability that Ethan Michael Reed is the father, which for those of you who aren't familiar with genetics means definitely not the father. I held the paper high enough for everyone to see the official letterhead. But here's my favorite part, I continued, my voice taking on a sweet conversational tone. The test also shows a 99% probability that the father is... I paused for dramatic effect. Noah Benjamin Reed. Ethan's face went from green to white to red in the span of 3 seconds. My brother? Your brother, I confirmed cheerfully, who, by the way, is standing right behind you in your groomsman line, looking like he wants to crawl under a rock. Every head turned toward the groomsman. Noah Benjamin Reed, 29, 2 years younger than Ethan and infinitely more charming, had gone pale as communion bread. He started backing away from the altar like he could somehow escape. Noah! Ethan turned to stare at his brother. You slept with Emily? Noah cleared his throat. It's not. We didn't... It was just a few times. A few times? Emily finally found her voice shrill with panic. Noah, you told me you loved me. You said you were going to leave Abigail. Now the congregation was getting a show better than daytime television. Abigail Claire Evans, 28, Noah's fiancée, was sitting in the 3rd row with Ethan's family. She shot to her feet like a rocket. What did you just say? Abigail's voice could have shattered the stained glass windows. Abigail, baby, I can explain, Noah started. But I wasn't finished with my revelations. Oh, but wait, I said brightly. There's more. Tell them about Liam, Emily. Liam Andrew Thompson, 33, Ethan's best man, was standing at the far end of the groomsman line. At the mention of his name, he went rigid. No, Emily whispered. Clara, please don't. Liam Andrew Thompson, I announced to the church, also a possible father. Also promised he'd leave his wife for you. Also completely unaware that you were playing musical beds with the entire wedding party. Liam's wife, Hannah Elizabeth Thompson, 31, seated with the other spouses, let out a sound like a wounded animal. She turned to stare at her husband with murder in her eyes. The church was in complete chaos now. Abigail was screaming at Noah. Hannah had broken free from her sister and was now advancing on Liam with her purse raised like a weapon. My relatives were shouting threats in Spanish and English. Ethan's family looked like they wanted to disown everyone and flee to another country. But through it all, I stood calm and collected in my princess ball gown, watching my carefully laid traps spring shut on every single person who had betrayed me. How? Emily whispered, tears streaming down her face. How did you find out? I smiled, the same shark smile from earlier, but bigger now, more satisfied. Because, my dear former best friend, I said sweetly, you forgot one very important thing about me. What? I'm a nurse. I know how to collect evidence without people noticing. Hair from your brush when I was over for planning sessions, saliva from glasses at restaurants, coffee cups from the trash. I shrugged elegantly. It's amazing what people will throw away when they think no one's paying attention. Ethan stared at me like I was a stranger. You planned this? The whole wedding? Oh, honey. I laughed, and it wasn't a nice sound. The wedding was real. My feelings were real. My trust was real, but your betrayal, that was also real. So I decided to give you exactly what you deserved. I gestured to the chaos around us. A public humiliation that matches your private betrayal. Emily was crying so hard she could barely speak. Clara, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was jealous and stupid and greedy. I finished. Don't forget, greedy. You saw a meal ticket and decided to take it regardless of who got hurt. I turned back to the congregation, many of whom were now standing and talking loudly among themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, my voice cutting through the noise. I apologize for turning my wedding into an episode of Jerry Springer. But I figured if I was going to be humiliated, I might as well make sure I wasn't the only one. My father, Robert, pushed through the crowd to reach me. Mia, what do you need? What can we do? Actually, Papa, I said, pulling off my $10,000 engagement ring and wedding band, I need you to call Detective William David Foster. Detective Foster? Ethan looked confused. Why are you calling the police? Because, I said calmly, handing my rings to my father, embezzlement is a crime, so is fraud, so is identity theft, and Emily has committed all three. The blood drained from Emily's face. What are you talking about? The credit cards you opened in my name, I explained patiently. The loans you took out using my social security number. The $75,000 you stole from my inheritance account to pay for your shopping sprees and abortion fees. Abortion fees? Ethan looked like he'd been slapped. Oh yes, I nodded. This isn't Emily's first pregnancy scare. Just her first attempt to use one as a weapon. She's had 3 abortions in the past 2 years, all paid for with money stolen from me. Emily collapsed back to her knees, sobbing hysterically. Clara, please, I'll pay it back. I'll do anything. Please don't call the police. Too late, I said, checking my phone. I already called them. They should be here any minute. And as if on cue, the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing closer by the second. The police sirens were getting louder, but the chaos in the church was deafening. Abigail was still screaming at Noah, who was trying to push past the other groomsmen to escape. Hannah had broken free from her sister and was now advancing on Liam with her purse raised like a weapon. My family members were shouting in a mixture of Spanish and English, while Ethan's family looked like they were attending a funeral instead of a wedding. Clara, you can't be serious about this, Ethan said, reaching for my hands. I stepped back before he could touch me. Dead serious, I replied. You stole from me, Ethan. You used our joint account like your personal piggy bank. You forged my signature on loan documents, and you helped her. I pointed at Emily, who was still kneeling on the altar floor, commit identity theft. The apartment lease you co-signed for her using my credit information, I continued. The car loan you guaranteed with my income statements, the credit cards you helped her apply for by providing my employment verification. Should I go on? Ethan's face crumbled. He looked around desperately as if the church's stained glass saints might offer him sanctuary. They didn't. The siren stopped right outside the Seattle church. Heavy footsteps echoed in the vestibule, and Detective William David Foster, 45, appeared in the doorway with 2 uniformed officers behind him. Clara, Detective Foster called out, surveying the chaos. I got your message. Are these the suspects? I nodded toward Emily and Ethan. Emily Lauren Hughes and Ethan Michael Reed. All the evidence is in the folder I sent to your office yesterday. Emily looked up at me, mascara streaming down her face. Yesterday? You sent evidence yesterday? I sent it last week, actually, I corrected. But I asked Detective Foster to wait until today to make the arrests. I wanted to give you one last chance to come clean, to maybe, just maybe, show a shred of decency and call off this ridiculous charade before you destroyed everything. But you planned the DNA tests, Ethan said weakly. You knew. I hoped I was wrong, I said simply. Right up until this morning, I hoped I'd wake up and discover this was all some horrible nightmare, that my best friend since kindergarten and the man I loved wouldn't actually betray me this completely. Detective Foster approached the altar. Emily Lauren Hughes, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and embezzlement. Ethan Michael Reed, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and embezzlement. No, wait. Emily scrambled to her feet as the officer pulled out handcuffs. Clara, please, we can work this out. I'll pay you back every penny. With what money? I asked coldly. You don't have a job. You have $75,000 in debt. You're pregnant with a baby that isn't even Ethan's. What exactly are you going to pay me back with? I'll figure something out. Please, Clara. We've been friends since we were 5 years old. That has to count for something." "It did count for something," I said, my voice breaking just a little. "It counted for everything. That's why this hurts so much." The officer cuffed Emily while she sobbed. Ethan didn't resist when they cuffed him, but he kept staring at me like he couldn't believe what was happening. "Clara," he said as they started to lead him away, "this whole thing with Emily, it was a mistake. A stupid, terrible mistake." I looked at him for a long moment. This man I'd planned to spend my life with, this man I'd trusted with my heart, my body, my future, my money. "No, Ethan," I said quietly. "Marrying you would have been the mistake." As the police led them toward the church doors, Emily turned back one more time. "Clara," she called desperately. "The baby, what about the baby?" "That's between you and Noah," I replied, "or you and Liam, or you and whoever else you've been sleeping with, but it's not my problem anymore." The church doors closed behind them with a heavy thud. For a moment, there was absolute silence. 200 people stared at me in my wedding dress, standing alone at the altar where I should have been saying "I do" to the love of my life. Then my grandmother, Isabella, started clapping. Slow, deliberate applause that echoed through the church like thunder. One by one, other people joined in. My parents, my siblings, my cousins, my college friends, even some of Ethan's relatives who looked mortified by their family's behavior. Soon the entire congregation was on their feet, applauding. "Mija," my father Robert said, climbing the steps to the altar and pulling me into his arms, "I am so proud of you." "Are you?" I asked, my voice muffled against his shoulder. "I just turned my wedding into a crime scene." "You turned your wedding into justice," my mother Elena corrected, joining our embrace. "Those people, what they did to you, it's unforgivable." Lucas pushed through the crowd to reach us, his face still flushed with anger. "Clara, I'm sorry I didn't see it. I should have known something was wrong. I should have protected you." "You couldn't have known," I told him. "I barely knew myself until a few months ago." Olivia appeared next to us, her expression a mixture of pride and fury. "Girl, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen in my life. But I'm still going to murder both of them when they get out of jail." "No murdering," I said weakly. "I've caused enough drama for one day." But even as I said it, I felt lighter than I had in months. The weight of pretending everything was fine, of lying to myself about red flags, of carrying the burden of their betrayal alone. It was all gone. Pastor Thomas approached cautiously. "Clara, my dear, are you all right? Do you need anything?" "Actually, Pastor," I said, surprising myself, "would it be possible to say a prayer? Not a wedding prayer, obviously, but maybe a prayer of gratitude." He smiled. "Of course, Mija." The congregation settled into their seats as Pastor Thomas moved to the pulpit. But instead of a somber prayer, he spoke about strength, about truth, about the courage it takes to stand up for yourself when the people you trust most have betrayed you. "Sometimes," he said, "God shows us people's true faces not to hurt us, but to save us from a lifetime of being hurt by them." As he spoke, I felt my phone buzz with a text message, then another, then several more in rapid succession. I glanced down and saw messages from numbers I didn't recognize. "Girl, we just saw the live stream. You are a queen." "Holy, is this real? This is the best wedding video ever." "Wait, someone was live streaming this?" I looked around and realized that several people in the congregation had their phones out, not just taking pictures, but actively recording. Some were even holding their phones up like they were broadcasting live. "Oh no," I whispered to Olivia. "Please tell me this isn't going viral." She checked her phone and winced. Clara, you might want to sit down." "How bad?" "Wedding Revenge is already trending on Twitter. Someone posted the whole thing on TikTok, and it has 2 million views. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. Babe, you're everywhere." I stared at her. "Everywhere?" The good news is everyone thinks you're a hero. The comments are all about how brave you are and how those two got exactly what they deserved. I looked around the Seattle church at all the faces. Family, friends, strangers who had come to witness what they thought would be a joyful celebration. Instead, they'd gotten front row seats to the most dramatic revenge plot in wedding history. And honestly, I wasn't sorry. You know what? I said loud enough for everyone to hear. I hope it does go viral. I hope every cheating bastard and backstabbing friend in the world sees this and thinks twice before they betray someone who loves them. The congregation erupted in cheers and applause again, but I wasn't finished. The wedding reception venue in Seattle looked like a ghost town. White tablecloths still covered the round tables, centerpieces of white roses, and baby's breath still perfumed the air, and the DJ still had his equipment set up. But instead of celebrating my marriage, we were having what my cousin Ava dubbed the world's most expensive divorce party. Waste not, want not, my mother Elena had declared when we arrived at the venue. We paid $40,000 for this food, this music, and we're going to celebrate Clara's freedom. So, that's what we did. We celebrated. The guests who stayed, and surprisingly, most of them did, danced to the playlist Ethan and I had chosen for our first dance as husband and wife. They ate the dinner we'd agonized over for months, toasted with the champagne we'd saved up to buy, and took pictures in front of the flower wall that was supposed to backdrop our wedding photos. It was surreal and perfect and absolutely nothing like I'd imagined my wedding day would be, but it was also exactly what I needed. I was sitting at the head table, still in my wedding dress, but with my shoes kicked off under the table when my phone rang. Detective William David Foster. Clara, I wanted to update you on the arrests. That was fast, I said, stepping away from the noise so I could hear him better. Well, when suspects confess to everything the moment they're alone in interrogation rooms, it speeds things up considerably. They confessed? Oh, yes, Ethan broke down the moment we separated them. Told us everything. The affair, the $75,000, the fake documents, even some things he didn't know about. Apparently, Emily convinced him to take out a loan against your house to pay for her medical bills. My stomach dropped. Our house. The one we just bought together. The one you just bought together, he corrected. According to the bank records, you're the only one on the mortgage. But Ethan forged your signature on a second mortgage application last month. $80,000. I sank into a nearby chair. $80,000 more. The good news is we caught it before the money was dispersed. The bank flagged the signature as suspicious and held the funds pending investigation. So that money is safe. What about Emily? Miss Hughes is a mess. Crying, apologizing, claiming she was manipulated by Ethan, but then she started trying to negotiate a deal, which pretty much eliminated any sympathy we might have had. What kind of deal? She offered to testify against Ethan for a reduced sentence, said she could provide evidence of other crimes he committed. When we told her we already had all the evidence we needed, she tried to claim he forced her to steal from you. I almost laughed. Even handcuffed in a Seattle police station, Emily was still trying to manipulate everyone around her. How long will they be in jail? That depends on the DA and how much they cooperate. But Clara, with the evidence you provided, we're looking at multiple felony charges. They're going to prison, not jail. Probably for several years. Several years. I tried to process that. By the time they got out, I'd be in my 30s. Maybe married to someone else, maybe with kids, maybe living a completely different life. The thought didn't make me sad. It made me hopeful. Detective Foster, can I ask you something? Of course. How did you know? When I first came to you 3 months ago with my suspicions, you didn't seem surprised, like you'd seen this kind of thing before. He sighed. Unfortunately, Clara, I see this more often than you'd think. Financial betrayal between romantic partners, friends taking advantage of friends, elaborate deception schemes. What I don't often see is someone as prepared as you were. Prepared? The evidence you collected was better than what most of our detectives gather. Every document labeled and dated, every conversation recorded, every financial transaction tracked. You built an airtight case. I'm a nurse, I said simply. We're trained to be thorough. You're also incredibly brave. A lot of people in your situation would have confronted the cheaters privately, maybe tried to work things out. You chose justice instead. Justice. Was that what this was? It felt more like survival. After I hung up, I walked back toward the celebration. But before I could reach my table, I was intercepted by a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, professional looking with a press badge hanging around her neck. Clara Thornton, I'm Rachel Olivia Bennett, 36, from Channel 7 News. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about what happened today. The news. I looked around and realized there were several people with cameras and notepads scattered around the Seattle venue. How did you... The video went viral about 2 hours ago. We've been trying to reach you for comment. What video? She held up her phone, showing me a TikTok with over 5 million views. It was the moment I played Emily's recorded confession through the church speakers. Someone had filmed the entire thing and posted it with the caption, "Bride exposes cheating fiancé and maid of honor at altar. Watch to the end." The comments were endless. This woman is an icon. The way she stayed calm. Queen behavior. I wish I had her spine when my ex cheated. Plot twist. This is the best wedding ever. Can we make this woman president? So, Rachel continued, would you be willing to give us an exclusive interview? Our viewers are very interested in your story. I looked at her, then at the cameras, then at my family celebrating my freedom instead of mourning my humiliation. You know what? I said, smiling. Yes, but not here. This is my family's time. Tomorrow, I'll tell you everything. Everything? The whole story. How I found out, how I planned the trap, how I gathered the evidence, all of it. Her eyes lit up. That would be incredible. This story has all the elements. Betrayal, revenge, justice, courage. People are calling you a hero. A hero. 3 hours ago, I'd been a heartbroken bride. Now I was a hero. Life was weird. As the evening wound down and guests started saying their goodbyes, I found myself alone for the first time all day. I changed out of my wedding dress into a simple black cocktail dress, which, ironically, I'd bought to wear to the rehearsal dinner. The Seattle reception venue was mostly empty except for family helping clean up. I walked out to the venue's garden, where fairy lights twinkled in the trees like stars. This was where Ethan and I were supposed to have our first dance as husband and wife. Instead, I'd spent the evening dancing with my father, Robert, my brother Lucas, my grandfather, and anyone else who asked. It had been perfect. Different from what I'd planned, but perfect in its own way. There you are. I turned to see Olivia walking toward me with 2 glasses of champagne. Thought you might need this, she said, handing me a glass. Thanks. I took a sip and sighed. Can I ask you something? Olivia asked. Anything. When did you know about Ethan and Emily? I was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I had suspicions for about 6 months. Little things. The way they looked at each other when they thought no one was watching. How Emily always found excuses to be around him. How Ethan seemed distant with you. Why didn't you say anything? I wasn't sure. She nodded. I understand. Do you think I did the right thing? I asked. The whole public humiliation thing, the arrests. Olivia stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Clara, they stole from you. They lied to you. They betrayed you in the worst possible way. And they were planning to let you marry him and spend your honeymoon not knowing that your husband was in love with your best friend and carrying her baby. Noah's baby, I corrected. Whatever. The point is, they deserved everything they got. And honestly, you probably saved other people from being victimized by them in the future. You think so? I know so. Emily's been using people her whole life. Remember in high school when she borrowed money from half our class and never paid anyone back? Or when she cheated on that scholarship exam and let Ava get blamed for it? Or when she... Okay, I laughed. I get it. I should have seen the patterns earlier. Love makes us blind to patterns, Olivia said gently. Both kinds of love, romantic love and friend love. We stood in comfortable silence, sipping our champagne and watching the fairy lights twinkle. So, what happens now? Olivia asked. Well, according to Detective Foster, they'll both probably go to prison. I'll have to testify at the trial, but he says it's pretty much a slam dunk case. I meant what happens to you. What do you do now? I thought about it. For 3 years, my entire future had been planned around Ethan. Our apartment, our joint accounts, our 5-year plan, our dreams of kids and houses and growing old together. All of that was gone. Now, I guess I figure out who I am when I'm not half of a couple, I said. I haven't been single since I was 27. I don't even remember what I like to do in my spare time. You like to read trashy romance novels and eat ice cream straight from the container while watching cooking shows, Olivia said immediately. Those are things I did when Ethan was working late. Exactly. Things you liked that you never got to do because you were too busy being the perfect girlfriend. She had a point. I want to travel, I said suddenly. I've always wanted to see Europe, but Ethan said it was too expensive. I've got money saved up now that I'm not spending it on a wedding or a cheating boyfriend. Maybe I'll take that trip. Do it. And I want to go back to school, get my master's degree in pediatric nursing, maybe specialize in trauma care. You'd be amazing at that. And I want to learn how to salsa dance, real salsa, not the basic steps Ethan and I learned for our wedding dance. Olivia grinned. Now you're talking. What else? I want to adopt a dog, a big one. Ethan was allergic, so we could never have pets. Keep going. I want to be someone I'm proud of. Not someone who ignores red flags because she's afraid of being alone. Not someone who lets people walk all over her because she's nice. Clara, look at me. I turned to face my sister. You are someone to be proud of. What you did today, that wasn't the action of someone who lets people walk all over her. That was the action of a woman who knows her worth and refuses to accept anything less. It was pretty badass, wasn't it? It was legendary. They're going to tell stories about today for years. As if to prove her point, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Saw your video online. You're my hero. My husband cheated on me last year, and I wish I'd had your courage. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. I showed the text to Olivia. See, she said, you're inspiring people. My phone buzzed again. Then again, message after message from strangers who'd seen the video and wanted to share their own stories of betrayal and revenge, or to tell me how my courage had inspired them to stand up for themselves. This is insane, I said, scrolling through dozens of messages. I just wanted justice for myself. I never expected to become a symbol of female empowerment. I was going to say to become an internet meme. But sure, let's go with female empowerment, Olivia laughed. Both can be true. We finished our champagne as the cleanup crew finished packing up the reception decorations. Soon the Seattle venue would be ready for the next event, the next celebration, the next beginning. Ready to go home? Olivia asked. I looked around one more time. This place that was supposed to hold the memories of the happiest day of my life. Instead, it would always be the place where I chose myself over settling for less than I deserved. Actually, I said, I don't want to go home. Not to the apartment I shared with Ethan anyway. Can I stay with you tonight? Of course. We'll order pizza, drink wine, and plan your European vacation. Sounds perfect. As we walked toward the parking lot, Olivia's phone rang. She answered it, then held the phone out to me with a strange expression. It's for you. Who is it? Ellen's show. I stared at the phone. Ellen, as in Ellen DeGeneres? Olivia nodded. I took the phone with shaking hands. Hello, Clara. This is Emma Catherine Walsh, 40, from Ellen's production team. We'd love to have you on the show next week to talk about what happened today. Ellen thinks your story is incredible and wants to celebrate your courage. Ellen DeGeneres wanted to celebrate my courage. I looked at Olivia, who was grinning like a maniac. You know what? I said into the phone. I'd love to. After I hung up, Olivia grabbed my hands. "Clara Thornton, you are about to be the most famous revenge bride in history." "Is that a good thing?" "Are you kidding? You're about to become every woman's hero. You're going to inspire millions of people to stand up for themselves. You're going to change your life completely." I finished. "Exactly. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Ethan and Emily, probably sitting in jail cells right now, realizing that their betrayal had consequences they never imagined. I thought about all the messages from strangers who said my story had inspired them. I thought about the life I'd been planning with someone who didn't deserve me and the life I was about to build for myself. "You know what, Olivia? I've never been more ready for anything in my life." And as we walked to the car, I couldn't help but smile. This morning, I'd woken up expecting to become Mrs. Ethan Reed. Instead, I was ending the day as Clara Thornton, the woman who refused to be played, who chose justice over comfort, who turned her worst day into her most powerful moment. They thought they ruined me on my wedding day. Instead, I buried them with the truth. I'm writing this from a cafe in Barcelona, sipping sangria and watching the sunset paint the Mediterranean golden. The European trip I dreamed about. I took it. 8 months backpacking through Spain, Italy, and France, staying in hostels, making friends with strangers, eating gelato for breakfast, and learning that I'm braver than I ever knew. The Ellen Show appearance led to more interviews, which led to a book deal, which led to speaking engagements at women's conferences. Apparently, my story resonated with people all over the world. Who knew that standing up for yourself could be so revolutionary? Ethan and Emily were both sentenced to 4 years in prison. They'll be eligible for parole in 18 months. I won't be attending their parole hearings. The baby was born 7 months after the wedding. Noah stepped up and is actually being a decent father, according to Abigail, who somehow forgave him and is helping raise the child. People are complicated. Hannah divorced Liam and took half of everything he owned. She sent me a thank you card. I sold the apartment Ethan and I shared and bought a little house with a garden where my new dog, Bella, likes to chase butterflies. I did go back to school. I start my master's program in pediatric trauma nursing next month. And yes, I learned to salsa dance. I'm terrible at it, but I love it anyway. Sometimes people recognize me on the street and ask if I regret what I did, if I wish I'd handled things differently, if I ever think about forgiving them. The answer is always no. I don't regret choosing truth over comfort. I don't regret demanding justice instead of accepting betrayal. And I certainly don't regret discovering my own strength in the process. The woman who walked down that aisle 8 months ago was hoping to find happiness by attaching herself to someone else's life. The woman writing this has learned that the best kind of happiness comes from building a life you're proud of, with or without someone else. I'm not looking for my next relationship. I'm not trying to replace what I lost. I'm creating something entirely new. And if someone wants to be part of that life, they'll have to earn it. They'll have to prove they deserve the love of a woman who knows her worth, who won't ignore red flags, who won't settle for less than she deserves. Because I learned something important on my wedding day. The person who matters most in your love story is you. My story is just getting started. If my courage in staring down betrayal and reclaiming my worth in that Seattle church resonates with you, please share my story to inspire others to confront deception, even from those they hold closest. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more tales of strength and transformation, and drop a comment below to tell me how my journey moved you. Click the box on the left for another empowering story. Together, let's champion the power of truth and lift up everyone finding the strength to build a life they're proud of. Thank you for being part of my journey.